McClanahan. I am joined by producer of the show and host of Church Jams Now and In Defense of Kesha, Kylan Savage. What's up, Kylan?
Not much. It's a brand new year. I'm clean shaven and already freaking AJ out.
Very much so.
uh, Also joined by AJ Simmons, who is kind of doing a little bit of producer things on this episode by recording it and uploading it.
That's right.
Producer in residence, AJ Simmons. What's up, AJ?
Oh, I've not a lot. I've been at home with my kids for 2 weeks. I look older, probably more frazzled.
AJ has
You do,
also
but it's okay.
written. Also, let me plug AJ's books real quick. Short stories for people with short attention spans, and Jesus and Joe Strummer, and the new podcast Crashing the Political Party. Had to make sure I got all that in, AJ. Um, so we're doing our 2024 wrap up episode here. We'll do our favorite songs and albums of the year. And I don't know about for you all, but for me, this was my favorite year of the 2020s for new music. I was
Interesting.
I was looking back at like all my top rated albums of the last however many years, and this has the most albums that I've given at least a 4.5 since 2015. So
Oh, wow.
probably my favorite year for new music in the last 9 years, I guess.
Wow.
Um, yeah. What about you all? How do you think this year has been?
So I started the year. Okay, so we haven't recorded it yet, but we also do a favorite albums of the year episode for Christians Now Patreon.
Hmm.
And it's our third year doing it, and I've always kind of struggled finding new music beyond like if one of my favorite bands releases something, just because I spend so much time listening to stuff for all the various shows that I'm a part of.
Hmm.
But I made a concerted effort at the beginning of the year. I was like, I'm gonna really like. I was looking at the release schedule. I was like, okay, there are some like big albums coming out this year. I'm gonna really focus on listening to uh, new releases. And I got a little worried about halfway through the year because I have my notes. I just did like kind of a brain dump. Like beginning of the year, I was like, okay, these are albums I need to check out that I know are coming out. And then as I started kind of placing them on a list, I had a couple that I was like, yeah, I guess this will make my top 10 list probably by default. And then towards the end of the year is like bam, 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 a bunch of releases that knocked some of those
Hmm.
other ones off the list. So yeah, I thought it was a really good year for music.
Good. Nice. What about you, AJ?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to sit and think about if this was like the best in a long time, but there was a lot of good music. One of the things that I think I noticed is so much music's been released, or at least my net is so wide that there are albums I missed until like way late in the year.
Yeah.
Some that I think will particularly probably be on Kylan's list that if I had heard them, I don't know, like in April when they came out or February when they came out, might be on my list. And so I don't know if this is like people backlog still kind of coming from the pandemic that they've held on to a bunch of stuff because like some of the people I listen to are dropping like an album a year.
Mm,
And this is hard to keep up with, right? And so
yeah.
in that way, there seems to be an abundance of good music, but also seems
Mhm.
a bit of a challenge to keep up with all of it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I asked on the Patreon in Everglow, patreon.com/in I asked the subscribers on there if they wanted to share their top albums of the year, and Mark K says Vultures by Ye and Ty Dolla Sign, Doll by
Mm.
Artemis, which you'll hear something else about that later. Performant by Triple S, American Motorsports by Bill Murray, It's Inside You by Candy, and he says his favorite CCM album was Child of God by Forrest Frank. Um, so we got that.
I can
I
t- I
go
I can
ahead.
tell you I did not listen to a single one of those albums on that
Okay.
list.
I think the only one I heard was Artemis, which will be on my list. Anybody who follows
Mm,
me knows that will probably be on my list.
of
Um,
course.
then I also wanted to read some of David Martin and Josh Balog's lists because they are my favorite list makers, and I always really look forward to what they have to say. So, just wanted to share those. They've both been on the show. Um, so Josh's favorite, he did a top 20 list, joshbalog.wordpress.com. Let me, his, well, I'll do his top 20 because he has several on here that are also on at least my list. The People We Became by No Big Deal at number 20. June by Make Sure at 19. Lust for Gold by Starflyer 59 at 18. L'Oreella by My Epic at 17. Self-titled EP by Paper Horses at 16. Rosemary Hill EP by Sixpence None the Richer at 15. Persona by Half Alive at 14. Artificial Paradise by One Republic at 13. All the Difference by Sky Peterson at 12. In Bloom by John Foreman at 11. Child of God by Forrest Frank at number 10, which Mark just mentioned in his comment. Like Unto Lambs by Luxury at number 9. Interloper by Zane Victory at 8. Pixelated Haze by Dawson Hollow at 7. Mana by Chris Renzema at 6. I'd be lying to say I'm not weak by So Much Hope Buried at number 5. That was one that I've been meaning to get around to. I need to make that happen. Anthem Sprinter by John Van Dusen at number 4. The Rain Falls Sideways by Benjamin Daniel at number 3. Slow Parade by Galia Taylor at number 2. And Clancy by 21 Pilots at number 1. Anybody
That
who
tracks.
follows me on Twitter probably saw that we do a CCM Twitter poll for the top albums of the year. Clancy by 21 Pilots won that. Um, let me I'll do David Martin's top 10 here. I was very surprised. I've only listened to a couple of his top 10, which we usually have a lot more overlap. But number 10, Songs from a Lost World by The Cure. Number 9, Alchemy Creek by Cloud Cult. Number 8, A Mirror Brightly by Geographer. Number 7, Mannequin by Kairos. Number 6, Only God Was Above Us by Vampire Weekend. Number 5,
Mm.
Nonetheless by Pet Shop Boys. Number 4, Anthem Sprinter by John Van Dusen. Number 3, Hit Me Hard and Soft by Billie Eilish. Number 2, What Now by Brittany Howard. And number 1, Vicious Creature by Lauren Mayberry from Churches. He did also
Mm.
have Benjamin Daniel at number 12. Yeah, number 12. And My Epic was also on here at number 18. Um, just wanted to read those off. Let's see.
Nice.
Um, AJ, did you separate your EPs and albums
All
for
right,
this or?
yes, I did separate EPs and albums, but I did start out with the whole like releases over 30 minutes, releases under 30 minutes. And
Okay.
then we were talking a couple weeks ago, and I was like, how do you define an EP? Like, it seems to have different definitions. And I think, Eric, you were the one that was like, if a band calls it an EP, it's an EP. So I just went with that and still I split off EPs from that under 30-minute list. And that
Okay.
actually like helped my brain. So I was able to make a holistic list that didn't include things actually labeled EPs.
Okay.
But I was trying
Uh,
Okay.
because it is like
All right.
some of the albums I have on my list are like 14 to 16 tracks. Like how do you compare that to like a 7-track album? Like that
yeah.
is a bit of a struggle for me.
Right.
Yeah.
But I got it done.
Okay. Kylan, what about you? Did you do EPs separate or?
I ended up not doing any EPs.
Okay. That's fair.
I couldn't yeah, it came down to crunch time, and there's one EP that I might shout out if I'm not too embarrassed to talk about it. But
Well, you
yeah,
got to do it
yeah,
now. If it's something embarrassing and you say it's embarrassing, you're going to have to talk about it.
yeah, we'll see, we'll see.
All right. I don't usually separate EPs and albums, but I had no EPs in my top 10, so I may just mention a few of my favorite EPs.
Mhm.
If they would have been in the top 10, that would have been part of my top 10, but since none made it, FE 304 Break by Nmix is a mini album, as they call them in K-pop, is one of those.
Right.
Rosemary Hill by Sixpence None the Richer. It's also one. See if there's anything else I wanted to mention as far as EPs. Those were the main two. Um, AJ, what EPs did you want to talk about?
I'll briefly mention 76th Street. They're from Arizona. They're Wild EP. Rustin Kelly released his Weakness, etc. EP. Gaslight Anthem released their Short Stories EP, and then Neon Horse with Habit.
Nice. Yeah, that Neon Horse one's really good too.
Ooh.
Um, kind of okay. I'm going to get you all off track here, and I'm sorry I didn't mean to do this,
Okay, no,
but
I know, I love it.
it's
It's your show, man.
it's been on my mind. Should Okay, so the way I see it, EPs in the long run are mostly forgotten. Like when you look back at an artist's discography from 20 years ago or whatever, you're looking at the albums, you're not looking at the EPs. Should artists only use EPs for things that are maybe of lesser quality than they would want on an album, but they still want out there? Um, how should EPs be
Okay,
utilized ideally?
okay. Well, I think they could be utilized in a couple different ways.
Okay.
So like one of my favorite EPs of all time is the Open Door EP by Def Cab.
Hmm.
And that basically that was songs that they recorded for the Narrow Stairs sessions that just didn't fit the vibe of the whole album. So it's essentially like B-sides that they still thought were good enough.
Right.
Um, so or not that they weren't good enough. They just uh like I think you can release an EP if you're recording an album and you have a bunch of songs and then you kind of whittle it down. And for whatever reason, those extra songs still should be released because they're really good.
Right.
But they just don't necessarily fit the vibe of what you're going for. I also think you can do. I think you can use EPs conceptually. You know, like John Foreman's Seasons EPs
Hmm.
or the Alchemy Index by Thrice, where you're going for like a really specific thing that maybe is not enough to like cover an entire album's length. And I think you can also use it as a way to like uh, potentially like keep interest up in between album cycles. You
Okay.
know, kind of continuing like brand recognition, essentially. You know, the same way like you know we're still seeing commercials for Oreos or Coca-Cola. It's like we don't need commercials for those, but it's just to be reminded that
Right.
they exist.
Right.
So I think you can utilize EPs in a couple different ways as an artist. So
Okay.
mm,
What about you, AJ?
One of the things I find interesting that bands are doing with EPs, or at least some of the bands I listen to, is they're dropping EPs and then like compiling them into an album, but it's like not all of the tracks off the EPs. They'll release like four-track EPs and then release like a
Mm.
10 or 11 track album, kind of based off of fan feedback. And so I kind of find that as an
yeah, almost
interesting.
like beta testing essentially.
Yeah, like let the fans sort of determine what the album's going to be. Or another way I think they're kind of useful is to like experiment with sounds. Like if you're trying to figure out what direction to
Yeah,
go, or you brought on a new guitarist and you kind of want to see what something does, like EP is useful. In that
yeah.
regard, I guess, because one of my favorite bands is Gaslight Anthem, and my favorite release from them is actually the Senior and the Queen EP. It's a 4-track EP, but all 4 tracks are awesome. I think 3 of my top 5 Gaslight songs come off of that album.
Oh wow.
Mm.
Or EP, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that to Kylan's point too about like keeping awareness going at like lower cost, perhaps as well. If you're like, we're not going to get in the studio for a month or two to record an album, we have a week or two's worth of material. Let's go get that out and get people paying attention to us.
Yeah.
I also like bands when it comes to EPs when it's like seasonal, like you're saying with like John Foreman, but like Christmas ones, like we don't need 12
Oh
tracks of the
right.
same Christmas songs. Like pick 4
100%.
and
Yeah.
release that as an EP.
Yeah. I'm here for that. Here for
I do
holiday
like
EPs.
I like the idea that a lot of bands use where they will, incorporate 1 or 2 songs from their EPs into, the album. Like
Hmm.
my concern from like a music appreciator's perspective is that some great songs will get lost to time by being on EPs, um, or single only, which was more of a thing in the 80s, I guess. Um,
Right.
but I don't know. I guess just thinking about it from that perspective, I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't know. I think all the good songs should be on an album at
Right.
some point.
But you like you could also view EPs too. I think some artists can almost use them as like a proof of concept of like,
Yeah.
especially if a band is sort of changing direction,
Yep.
it can be a really easy way to sort of ease people into it rather than like, bam, we're a totally different genre now. It can
Right.
kind
Yeah.
of get more people on board with those genre changes and stuff or sound
Okay.
changes.
All right. That's fair.
I don't know, man.
All
I
right.
also I like
Go
EPs
ahead.
also for like covers too. Like Gaslight Anthem Short Stories has an
Mm,
Oceanized cover from Billie Eilish.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even like if I didn't know that that was a Billie Eilish song, I'd be like, man, it's an awesome new song from Gaslight Anthem. And then they
right.
did a updated version of Blue Jeans and White T-shirts. They updated the lyrics because their hometown had
Nice.
changed. And he's like, so the lyrics no longer made sense in my hometown because like those streets that
Right.
people would buy working class houses on now have like townhomes and like $1 million apartments and stuff. So he updated the lyrics. It's like, well, don't hold on to
Right.
that. Yeah, like that's a useful way to
Yeah.
use an EP.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. I like it for covers for sure.
Yeah.
Um. Well, let's go to our top songs. I know, Kylan, you said you might not order yours, or even we didn't know how many you might select. How'd you
They're
go about
they're they're not ranked, and
it?
so okay. I took the song list as an opportunity to one highlight my favorite songs from some of my top albums of the year. But basically the song on each album that like really hooked me into the album. And I also used it as an opportunity since 15 obviously is larger than 10. I used it as an opportunity to put songs that even though the album is like nowhere near my top 10 list, there were songs that I just really connected with and really loved. So it's a little
Like
all
that.
over the place, but
It's you.
welcome. Yeah, both of my lists are absolutely, what, I'm absolutely on brand as the Chaos album.
Chaos.
So
All right. Well, good. We wouldn't expect anything less.
yeah.
All right, Kylan, I guess go ahead and tell us about your songs you chose.
Okay. Do you want me to play any of these, or should I just run through them and then we can share the playlists
If
in
you would
the
like to, you
description?
can. If you would like to, you can play them.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll just play like some like short little clips or whatever.
Okay.
All right. This is in no order. Okay.
Okay.
No order. These are just 15 songs that I really liked this year.
Okay.
Let's start out with "Missing Out" by Maya Hawke. It's got this real sort of like early Feist. Can y'all hear this?
Mm-mm.
Is it not, Sharon?
No, I don't hear it.
Oh, here.
Oh, there it goes. Now I can.
Can you hear that? There it goes.
Mhm.
Yeah, really good. And it's really personal to her. I like it. It's just a fun little quirky indie song. Um, so next though, I think this is my top song of the year. It's definitely my most played song by a long shot. I don't know if it's my favorite on the album, but we'll get into that more. I have Dramamine by Middle Kids. Because this
Yeah.
song is just everything I want in a song.
That was on my
Um,
that was a contender for my top 15. Didn't quite make it,
Yeah, it's my
but
top
oh yeah,
24 of the year.
yeah, it would have been in
it's
mine too. Yeah.
so good. All right, let's move into into the pop section. Of course I have to include "Delusional" by Kesha, new Kesha single. I didn't love "Joyride" as much as I wanted to. It was a little too circusy for me, but "Delusional" is great, just like classic pop, uh, sort of like mid tempo pop, but
Hmm.
like real epic. I love it. Um, guys, I'm so sorry. I gotta include it. A bar song, "Tipsy" by Shabuzi.
Oh my
I
gosh.
just I you know, I'm at the age and at the point in my life. I was talking about this with my wife where like we're so basic now. She's like, we used to be like such hipsters. I'm like, no, everyone loves this song. It's bad. And I'm like, screw it. I like what I like in this song. And the one thing though, so I've listened to the whole album. I don't love it. He's got that very typical like current hip hop vocal production. So everything's like a little auto tuned, which bugs me because if you watch any live performances, uh, he's got the voice to do it. He doesn't need that kind of production. But still, that song real catchy. It's definitely bringing back the sort of. It's not country though. This is a whole thing I'm not going to get into. But what everyone is like sort of defining as like this reinvention of country. No, we're just bringing back the mid 2000s like stomp clap, Lumineers, Mumford and Sons kind of thing.
Mm.
It's been long enough. I'm here for it. Speaking of another one on my list, Texas Hold'em by Beyonce. Uh, I love this song. The album as a whole, too bloated, too much.
Yeah,
Can't handle it. But this song,
I agree.
perfect. Um, okay, if we're keeping with country though, I do have "Once Upon a Yesterday" by Willie Nelson from The Border. It's the second song. Uh, what I really love about it is like Willie Nelson just has this ability to you just believe him, and he's getting so much older, and this is very much potentially the last year that he is releasing music while he's alive. I think it's going to be another Prince situation whenever he does go. I think we're still probably going to get Willie Nelson albums for the next 10 years,
Hmm.
but uh, you can really feel his age in that song, and it makes me really kind of sad, but in a good way, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, okay, I've also got so it's not my favorite on the album, but the last song on F1 Trillion by Post Malone, Yours. Uh, I think I talked to you guys about it when I first listened to this. I think it even though I don't even necessarily agree with the sentiment of the song, it's a daddy daughter song, and daddy daughter stuff just makes me cry.
Mm.
And I did not have crying at a Post Malone song on my 2024 bingo card yet. Here we are, so I had
Hmm.
to include it on the list. I've also got Death Valley Honeymoon by Dustin Kensrue featuring Cat Clyde. It was the first single off of Desert Dreaming. Another good sort of like country folk song. Love the production on it. I'm Back, the first song off of I'm Doing It Again, Baby by Girl in Red. I'm a big Girl in Red fan, and I love this album. I think it's a perfect album opener.
I don't
What
know Girl in
else? What
Red.
else?
What's the genre there?
Folk pop.
Sad, horny lesbian music.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Uh,
Gotcha.
this album's like real poppy,
Hmm.
so
Okay.
it's this kind of vibe.
Okay.
She's one of those artists. She's real open about all of her songs are really personal, and then this album, I think in particular, and definitely this song is sort of about you know taking a mental health break, kind of stepping back, or whether you want to or not, but like kind of having to, and then
Mhm.
kind of jumping back in. It's I'm back. So
Okay.
love that. Um, what We Earn by the Early November. I texted both of you guys about this last week. Maybe the heaviest the Early November has ever been. It's
Yeah.
almost reminiscent of like a Thrice or an Under Oath, kind of without the screaming. Like the production is like it's really riffy,
Hmm.
uh, and pretty heavy. Did not ever anticipate the Early November doing something like this,
No.
but I was here for it.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, what do we got? I got four more. Okay. Long in the Tooth, the first song on 1, 2, 3, 4 by Modern English. This just feels like classic Modern English. This is like just real happy, poppy, sort of 80s Brit pop, with a little bit of sadness behind it. So we'll definitely talk about that more later. Then I have, okay, three more. A Psychic Wound by Los Campesinos. It's just a classic Los Campesinos song. Are you guys familiar with them at all?
Hmm.
Yeah, somewhat.
They're one of those bands that I always forget that I really love, and then I get into them and I'm like, oh yeah, I like them. It's good Scottish indie rock. Next I have Cancer by Jesse Wells. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jesse Wells. I feel like he's probably shown up in everyone's like Instagram feeds at some point where it's just like this long-haired kid sitting with an acoustic guitar in like a cornfield. He's got he's been doing these songs uh like really topical songs. Like
Mm.
he did a song right after the
Hmm.
United
Hmm.
Healthcare
Hmm.
guy was assassinated.
Hmm.
And it's real. He sounds kind of like Bob Dylan, but
Yes.
his lyrics are real kind of John Prine.
Yes.
But he's got a song called Cancer that lyrically, I hope we share these playlists and everyone just listen uh, to the song Cancer because it's real intense, but really good. And then my last one, here we go. Nightmare by Adeem the Artist. This is a song from a person who was raised evangelical, kind of writing a song about that experience. And I will always relate to those kinds of songs. The first lyrics are, suppose you showed up Sunday to sing songs to your Savior and found the parking spaces filled with folks red-faced in anger, with homemade signs opining your children must be saved because your youth group leaders prey on them and you feel afraid. Now the place you thought would still be safe no longer feels like home, and you understand they don't believe, but why can't they just leave you alone? Real intense.
Yeah.
I'll talk about that a little more later, but it's a really, really, really solid song. So I think those are my 15 songs for the year.
Nice. Um, AJ, do you want to talk about your 15?
Yeah. I'm gonna do something shocking and actually start off with a CCM Twitter favorite band, and that is
Ooh,
MXPX.
Mm,
Their new one, Set Afire.
nice.
This I actually used this as an example the other day as I build this pile of like things aren't quite right in society because Mike Herrera is writing angry protest punk music instead of like nostalgic pop punk and love songs about his wife. He's ready to take to the streets and burn down, pardon the language there, but that's genuinely shocking.
you just made
Yeah.
Kylan's editing job hard.
This is supposed to be done tomorrow. Yeah. It's okay.
My bad. But right, like this is such a different song for them. Like this is a traditional punk song in many ways, but like
Yeah.
different for MXPX.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, and so I dig this like a lot because yeah, like it caught me off guard. If you told me that
Yeah.
MXPX was going to write a protest punk rock
Yeah.
song
Right.
about things being messed up and needing to take to the streets, I'd been
Yeah.
like, okay, sure. Uh-huh. Is this like a
Right.
joke? And so yeah, this was number 15 for me.
Okay.
Number 14 is Bayside's frontman Anthony Rainieri's High Road off of his like
Mm,
alt country record that he dropped.
mm.
What the fun fact about this has like this down, down, down that's sitting there. First song I ever heard one of my sons singing, my youngest, in the car while I was driving. I see
Oh
him being like
wow.
down, down, down.
Nice.
This is a good song. It's got his typical like lyrics, but just delivered very differently than a Bayside song. He now lives in Nashville, and it's
Yeah.
rubbing off on him, in a good way.
Happens to everybody. Every good musician goes through a country phase.
Well, he's also like supplementing his Bayside income by being a songwriter in Nashville, so why not
Mm.
do a proof of concept under your
There
own
you go.
name?
Yeah. Yeah.
Next up is Medicine Rock by Doc Mills. Doc Mills is a longtime friend of mine, and he dropped his album this year,
Oh, cool.
and it's good like roots Americana folk. Lots of fiddles and banjos and all that good stuff. And this is actually the closer track, if I remember right, off of his album that we'll talk about in a bit.
Nice.
But yeah, just solid roots Americana music. Um,
Sweet.
Next
Dig
up
this.
is Frank Turner's Somewhere in Between off his Undefeated album. This is him
Probably.
getting like 2000s electronic indie a bit. He does this every
Yeah.
so often. He just needs to drop like an entire album like this.
Yeah.
Because it's very different from his like folk punk type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And sounds almost more
Right.
like a Postal Service B-side.
Nice.
Number 11 is Candy Carpenter's Nervous System. It's a pop song about being anxious. What's not to like about that?
All
Right.
those. All those.
And this is like a very 80s sounding pop.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 10 is Urban Heat's Seven Safe Places. This is like some 1980s style, like gothic new wave stuff. Fun fact, because I don't think it's going to happen now. Novel 2 was going to be titled Seven Safe Places after this track.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
I got
Okay.
like halfway to two-thirds of the way through that novel, and then the election happened, and
Uh-oh.
just took my ADHD hyper focus away, and we're gonna see if I get back to it. But yeah, I heard this song for the first time at like the gym, and immediately my mind was like, "This, this is the story."
Yeah.
So we'll see if I get back to that. That may become novel 3 or 4 instead. But like I said, about halfway to two-thirds of the way through Seven Safe Places
Nice.
named after this track. Number 9 is Glass Spells Hechizos. This is a band out of San Diego slash Tijuana. They do like very southwestern, like Southwest meets Depeche Mode
That's cool.
music,
I
and
dig
I
that.
dig it. Yeah, they're so good live. I was able to catch them when I went out to Arizona. There was like this weird confluence of a bunch of concerts happening when I was out in Arizona, and it was so good. This is in Spanish, so if you're like, I don't know what she's saying, yes, it's in Spanish. But it's such a good, fun, like 80s dance tune. Um, Number 8 is Dave Haas's Pretty Good Year. Dave Haas is a punk rocker turned kind of like Americana, uh, Frank Turner, Brian Fallon, Bruce Springsteen sort of genre of
Nice.
like blue collar rock and roll. I dig this, right? That's that
Nice. I
acoustic
can dig
driven
this.
kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Number 7 is Bayside's Castaway. So some more aggressive punk rock,
Yeah.
right? Almost bordering on like metalcore a bit with that riff,
Mm-hmm. A little
which
bit
is
reminiscent of Amberlin's like never take friendship personal kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
yeah, I could see that
Yeah.
absolutely. Number six could be familiar to Kylan. Middle kids go to sleep on me.
Hey, this song's so good.
It is so good. Fun fact, Middle Kids is one of two bands to have three tracks in my top 24 for the year. Dramamine is one of the other
Nice.
ones. And then um, Terrible News would have been the other one.
Nice. Terrible news. So
It's
good.
so good, so catchy, right?
Uh,
But yeah, I like this sort of like dreamy kind of indie pop sound.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um, number five is Snow Patrol, These Lies. Again,
Ooh, nice.
at the start of this year, if you told me Snow Patrol was going to be one of my favorite albums of the year, spoiler, I would have been a bit surprised by that. But this is, I think, was like the most mellow. I mean, they're a fairly mellow band, but this is probably the most mellow on this new album.
Right.
I like this a lot. Number four is a band I've mentioned a few times before on here, Pale Waves, Gravity, some 1980s style, like new wave, uh, sad, anxious lesbian music that you can dance to.
Yeah.
Um, right? This is fun. It kind of sounds like
Yeah.
Middle Kids a little bit too.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
this is good. This is
All right,
good.
number three,
Yeah.
we're returning to CCM Twitter favorites with Benjamin Daniel Lights Out. This is very Jimmy Eat World, so I don't think it's a
Hmm.
shocker
Mm,
that I like this track a lot.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Number two is Gigi Perez's Sailor Song. Again, if you told me I would have
Uh,
liked a song that blew up on TikTok, I would have thought unless we're talking like TikTok from Return to Oz or something like that, I wouldn't have guessed that. But this is such a good, like, folksy, very like emotional song. And it's catchy
yeah.
as all heck. Look at that. I censored myself there. How about that? But like it's got that
Thank
line
you.
like kiss me on the mouth and love me like a sailor, like this idea of like urgency and like desperation
Right.
and stuff like that. It's so great. She's got a wonderful voice as well. It's very emotive.
Hmm.
And then number one is returning to some punk rock. Frank Turner's Ceasefire. I bounced back and forth literally until we went live on these two tracks. This builds to a really great song about him being at war with 15-year-old himself as a 40-year-old man,
Nice. I love that.
which I think
Love
we
that.
all might be able to relate to a little bit. But again, this starts almost like a like
100%.
postal service song,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and then it builds to him like just screaming ceasefire. That I think if I got to do that on stage with him, might do a better job of like helping me than like therapy. So,
Right, right.
but yeah, these are my 15 for the year.
Sweet.
Very nice. And
Your
I
list.
will link the playlist in the description. Do you have a link to yours, Kylan, that you can send me that I can link in the description?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Hold on,
we'll
let me go ahead and I'll go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm thinking of it.
cool. Um so yeah, I'll link all of our playlists for our favorite songs in the description. Um so for me, I had a list of like 100 songs that I really liked and tried to whittle them down to 10 and was having trouble with that. And then the new Falling Up album came out and made that even harder. So, since this is my show, I said, well, let's just do 15 songs and I won't have to
Yeah.
try to eliminate anything. Um,
Yeah. There you go.
Number 15 for me is Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter, one I'm sure a lot of people are sick of, but I'm sorry, it's very catchy.
Catchy
Um,
tune.
gets gets very much stuck in my head. The album was a little
Did
bit
you guys
disappointing to
hear
me, but
the
these are awesome.
for sure? Did you guys hear the story about this? About the production on this is
No.
actually I think it was our arcade. So there's a couple like royalty free music like beat services that like smaller time producers and stuff can use. Um, and apparently, I watched a whole thing on it. Um, the actual beat, like the production of this song, basically everything except the bass is one of these like royalty free music loops
Hmm.
that whoever her producer was just got, because he pays $15 a month for this service or whatever, and it's
That's
blown up
crazy.
into this huge song. But then subsequently, the guy that actually wrote it, I don't remember his name, but he's now also become uh, he's gotten a little recognition from it as well, which is nice because as someone
Yeah.
that has like sold like royalty free loops and stuff, it's like, oh, that's gonna be like such a bummer
Yeah, he should be
that
a
someone just
millionaire.
basically like took it's like the
Yeah.
laziest producer thing. Yeah, exactly. But the guy that actually produced Sabrina Carpenter's version is making all the money.
That's wild.
Or-
I didn't know that. Thanks for
yeah, I
sharing.
think the only thing he added was a bass line. Yeah, yeah. I'll find the video breaking that down and I'll send that to y'all. It's crazy.
Cool. Um, my number
Yeah, it's a
14.
good song.
My number 14 is "Obliterate Me" by Ellis. Ellis is one of the most like tortured artist types that I've ever encountered, and unfortunately, she doesn't get the recognition that tends to come along with a lot of people like that. So,
Right.
but this song, it starts out, I had a dream that I died and it all turned to white, no one around, not even a sound except for my mind, and I can't imagine anything worse than being alone with myself forever. And the song is just kind of riffing on the idea of being um, rather than heaven or hell, you are just stuck with your own mind
Mm.
for eternity. Um,
This feels right up AJ and I's alley.
Mhm.
yeah, she's great. All of her stuff is really good. And then number 13 is Live My Life by Espa. A very different song for Espa. It's almost like that early to mid 2000s pop rock Kelly Clarkson kind of Since You've Been Gone kind of
Nice.
vibe, but which is not normally Espa's thing. And I don't think this song was actually very well received, at least by the ratings I've seen, but I think it's great.
Interesting. Cool.
Um, yeah. Number 12, I Can Never Say Goodbye by The Cure. Um, One of 8 great songs on that album. Um, I don't. I mean, what do you
Yeah,
say about
look
the
at the
Cure,
song.
Billy? It sounds like
Oh, that's good.
a good Cure
It's good.
song. Yeah. Um,
Hmm.
then my number 11 is "Fool" by Milena featuring Ari. Um, I came across this girl on a podcast and found her music, and in the song she sounds like so defeated. It's like I don't know that I've ever heard anything quite like it. Like her voice is almost like she can't hardly get the words out. Her voice is like cracking a little bit. Real
Yeah.
drama type stuff. Very similar to Ellis. If you like Ellis, you'll probably like this one as
Sweet.
well. Number 10, "Lust for Gold" by Starflyer 59.
There you go.
My favorite
Such a
song.
good song.
Yes, my favorite song on the album. I
That's
think one of his best choruses.
mine
I
too.
think. Yes,
Yep.
so good. Talk more about that album later. Number 9, "Bite Through My Tongue" by Casey. One of the few songs on this album where it has prominent screaming on, which had been their whole thing up until kind of this album. But I think the way they use like the singing and the screaming in this one is good and has a great chorus as well. Um,
Nice.
Number 8, "You Have Been Here Too" by Galia Taylor. Just absolutely beautiful song.
So good.
She has
So good.
an incredible voice. I'll talk more about her later as well, but this
Yeah.
is my favorite song on her album, "Slow Parade."
Uh,
Number 7, "Lights Out" by Benjamin Daniel, featuring Chase Tremaine, also
hey.
on AJ's list. Just his catchiest song ever, I think. Um, yeah, like very Jimmy Eat World, like AJ said, just great toe tapper, upbeat kind of song with Benjamin's, his trademark sensitive, and well-written lyrics, which we have an interview recorded with Benjamin that'll be coming out at some
Yeah,
point,
coming out soon.
coming soon. Then number 6, Eye for an Eye by Gemma Hayes. Um, my favorite song on this album, contender for my favorite song by her, and she has a lot of great ones. I'll talk more about her
Wow.
later. Number 5 is The Waterfall House by Falling Up / The Chilling Alpine Adventure. The opening track on their new album. I just think it's
It's good.
gorgeous. Gorgeous song. Number 4 is Virtual Angel by Artemis.
You did a reaction to this one, right?
We did do a reaction video to this song.
Yes.
This may have
Yeah,
been the one that
I
was
didn't
played.
realize it was this new.
Yeah. What'd you say, AJ?
Oh, this may have been the one that was played at a basketball game I was at. Because I was
Oh,
one
really?
of them. I was like, why do I know this? This is K-pop. Why do I? I was like, Eric Mac. That's why I know
Oh, yeah.
this.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite K-pop songs. I'll talk more about this album later as well. Number 3, Tall Grass in the Lobby. My current favorite song on the Chilling Alpine Adventure album, if it's anything like
Nice.
the other later following up albums. My favorite might shift several times over the next few years,
Right.
but
So new. It's only been out
yeah,
like a week
Yeah.
at this point.
A week?
right.
Yeah.
Which is one reason why I didn't put it any higher than 3, because I'm still kind of figuring things out, I think.
Yeah.
And my top 2 are both
Right.
in my top 100 songs of all time list. So
Wow.
I couldn't put anything that I haven't given that ahead of those. So
Right. Right.
number 2 is Butterfly Effect by Artemis. Just a great like electro pop kind of um, atmospheric song. It just sounds great to me. Not one of the higher rated songs on the album according to Rate Your Music, but it is my jam.
Nice.
Then number 1 is Westward by Benjamin Daniel. The opening track on his album The Rain Falls Sideways. One of the best like album openers I've heard in a long time. It's very unexpected song to be a opener. It almost hits like a closer, I think, but works.
I mean, it's like 6 minutes long.
Yeah, yeah, but just pretty
Yeah.
pretty epic. Also finished third in the CCM Twitter favorite songs of 2024. So
Nice.
that's my list.
Cool.
Let's
Hey guys, I'm gonna
yeah.
step away for just a second. Y'all can keep talking if you wanna. I'll be like right back.
Okay.
I can still hear you.
Okay. Did you have any honorable mentions you want to talk about, AJ, or did you
On
cover that
songs?
with your EPs on
no.
albums?
Oh, on albums.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. Let's see. Yeah, on albums, I will. I like to try and highlight ones that are like lesser known people.
Mhm.
I'll have my number 24 on my 24 for 2024 is Lightworker, How the Beautiful Decay. It's not as much, I think, a part of my like Twitter conversations, but I have like a soft spot for that like kill switch engage metalcore
Mhm.
sound, and I think that scratches that itch.
Okay.
While waiting for both Killswitch and then Howard Jones's band to release new music. So I'll draw attention to that. I'm gonna say Tiny Moving Parts, Deep in the Blue. Solid kind of that Midwest emo kind of pop punk sound. I like them. Um, Donovan Woods, Things Were Never Good If They're Not Now. It's like this, he's this folk singer out of Canada that I saw on tour with Gaslight Anthem. And then the Forecast are back. I don't know if we've talked about the Forecast before off
Mhm.
mic. Their new one, Good Journey, is really good. It's short. It's like 8 tracks with one of them being like under a minute long. Or 90 seconds, something like that. But yeah, the Forecast, Good Journey. Those would be some albums that I would spotlight just because they're not as well known.
Very nice.
Yeah,
All right,
the forecast is on
go
my
ahead.
honorable mentions as well.
Okay.
Cool.
Um well, since you're back, do you want to talk about your honorable mentions, Kyle?
Mm, mm.
You want me to go? All right. So some of my honorable mentions. We've got a couple that like Anberlin's Vega. I don't know whether to consider that a compilation or an album because 8 of the 10 songs were already released. I think it's 8 of the 10 or 10 of the 12 already released on EPs. But that's up there. Project 86's Omni Part 2, Ann Wilson's Rebel, uh, Ellis, No Place That Feels Like, which I mentioned her earlier. Zach Top's Cold Beer and Country Music. If you like 90s country, he's a good like throwback to that, I think. Yeah, that hits most of my honorable mentions, I think. Kylan?
I mean, I realized I missed a song on my top song list because I went all out of order.
Okay.
And it's on an album that's on my honorable mentions. Real quick, Josh Morningstar, who's one of my favorite country songwriters. I got to see him live in Lukenbach. He's one of those guys, like, he's got solo stuff, but he works primarily as a songwriter. He came out with a self-titled album this year. And the first song on it is called the I Can't Write a Song. And boy, does this song, as a creative, as a songwriter, this just hits me so hard. I've written so many songs like that are just like, I don't know, I can't write a song. And he's really funny. He's got a song about Jerry Lee Lewis. That's one of my favorite country songs. But yeah, so that was also on my list for the year. And then that album is an honorable mention for me. Other honorable mentions, ones that barely didn't make the cut. Blue Wave by Grandaddy. That was an album I was really excited about. Pre-ordered it on vinyl because the whole thing was he took inspiration from bluegrass and new wave, thus Blue Wave.
Interesting.
You have
It's
my
a
attention.
very
Yeah.
yes, no, exactly. That's like it. This was like, oh, sounds like the perfect album for my wife and I. Neither of those things come through as much as I want. They're a little overridden by just Granddaddy's thing in general. But it's good. It's real chill. I think both of you guys would like that album. Desert Dreaming by Dustin Kensrue. I really wanted that to be on my top 10. But I had lots of conversations. Similarly, I think Desert Dreaming and Cowboy Carter kind of had the same problem where they're marketed as country albums. I don't think they're country albums so much as albums by each of those individual artists that are influenced by country, and that's a whole other conversation we could have. It's a very good Dustin Kensrue album. I don't think it's a country album. I think I was just expecting something a little different. What else? As It Ever Was, so will be again, but the Decemberists. I know that made Caleb Despise list this year. Just barely missed out for me. And Deeper Well by Casey Musgraves. That was another
I
one
have that
I
on my
really
list
wanted
too.
to love.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh wait, no, I do have a couple more. Sorry. Fantasizer Plus, Volume 2 by Freeze Pop. I don't know if you guys know Freeze Pop. They were Metric before Metric. Very like electro pop from the late 90s that they've still been doing stuff. They're really good. They had a couple songs. I think they had a song on Guitar Hero. And Page of the Lion didn't make my list. We'll get into that. I do have a fun album release curio fun fact for you guys.
Okay.
Are y'all aware of the band Austrian Death Machine?
Yes.
I've heard the
side
name.
project Austrian Death Machine. Okay, Tim Lambesis from As I Lay Dying. It was a side project where they do death metal and he sings like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Austrian Death Machine released an album this year.
Oh wow.
Did y'all know that? I don't think anyone knew
I did
that.
not know that.
And I had to mention it. I haven't listened to it because why would I? But because their last album came out like 10 years ago or something. But they apparently like quietly released an entire new album this year.
Wow.
So I had to share that with everyone.
Fun fact about your fun fact. I interviewed Tim Lambesis when he was first promoting that first Austrian Death Machine
Oh,
album.
really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's funny.
Yeah. You just never
That's so funny.
you never expect the things that happen to happen. I
Yeah,
guess.
that's true.
But
Oh, sorry. Okay, I got one more. Just Kaylee didn't make the list.
go
I'm
for
so
it.
sorry. I did listen to a lot. All Quiet on the Eastern Esplanade by the
Libertines. Oh
Libertines.
my God,
Y'all
I
listen to the
didn't
new
mention.
Libertines album?
Yes, I didn't mention that because like I've talked about
Yeah,
them on here before, but it's good. It's number 20
right.
on my
It's
24
really
list.
good. It's really
I haven't
good.
heard that
Just
one.
barely didn't make my top 10.
Yeah, in at number
It's
20.
good. It's like if the Smiths like kept making music.
Okay.
It's good.
Hmm.
I don't know
I'll have to
about
I
check
think
that.
that
so.
out.
I think so. I think so. Especially those first like the first half of the album feels very Smiths to me.
I feel like it's more like if the
I don't
Laws
know.
and the Clash made a record.
Maybe. Yeah, that may be closer, but
Did you check that out because of me?
my reference.
Have I in fact introduced you?
No,
Oh,
no, no,
what?
no. I love the Libertines, dude. We've talked about this. I like the Libertines a lot.
Hmm.
Maybe we haven't talked about it. Maybe we're discovering new things as our friendship deepens throughout this show.
All right,
Okay.
let's get into our top 10. I'll go first.
Yeah.
My number 10 album of the year is Slow Parade by Gleah Taylor, which I talked about a little bit.
Nice.
Um, her voice is just so good. Actually, we
So
were
good.
listening to it in the car recently. My 7-year-old was riding with me, and she says she should have been on American Idol. She would have won. So actually,
I love that. That's
I
the
told,
highest compliment you can get from a 7-year-old.
yeah, I messaged Kalia and told her that, and she seemed to enjoy it.
That's great.
But yeah, just a great. I don't know how I'd categorize it. Like, I guess is it like kind of folk pop? Would you say, or
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
See, I
So
didn't find out about that album until like you text about her, Kylan. When was that? Like
Oh yeah.
December? Like, which is
Right. I was
hilarious,
like, do
right?
you
Because
never yeah.
two of my top 10 bands are Velvet Blue performers. Guess which two those
mhm.
are, probably.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I should know other Velvet Blue bands and like just didn't. But it's a great record. I think this is one of the ones that, like, if I think I'd gotten this earlier in the year,
Gotten
it
this a
probably
little earlier, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
come like December, if I'm getting new stuff, I'm sorry. Like even if I really love it, if it's gonna be a struggle to get it.
We could have done a segment like or we can do this next year of stuff you discovered from this year that you really enjoyed that didn't come out this year too. That would be a good,
Mm-hmm.
good space for your things that came out later in the
Yeah.
year or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
AJ, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is Chuck Reagan's Love and Lore. Chuck Reagan is the
Mm.
frontman for Hot Water Music, a punk band. He also does like
Oh wow.
folk Americana kind of roots music. He is one of two people with two albums on my top 24 because of his Love and Lore record, and then Hot Water Music released Vows. So that ended up
Oh
like
wow.
number
Yeah.
23, something like that. But
Is
no,
Anthony Ranieri the other one?
yes. Spoiler, I haven't mentioned the Bayside album. Gee. But yeah, no, this is just good, solid, like Americana. My stuff is very like splits largely into like folk music and then weird like 80s inspired new wave largely with some punk sprinkled in. But no, I've liked his stuff going back to Hot Water Music, but I've met him before and actually like fun fact, we mentioned Jesus and Joe Strummer. He's the bassist for Joey Bell all grown up and changed. Like having interacted with
Nice.
him and like read interviews and listened to interviews and stuff like that, but like his demeanor and stuff like that comes from Chuck Reagan. But
Very
it's a
cool.
good
Sweet.
album. It's lots
Love
of good
that.
stuff. I like Echo in
Hmm.
the Halls, Wild in Our Ways, and One More Shot would be three I would point out on there.
Awesome. All right,
Love
Kylan,
that.
what's your number 10?
My number 10 is 1, 2, 3, 4 by Modern English. I was okay, so we'll talk about this. A couple days ago, I texted y'all because we had talked about the Cure album was like really, really, really good. And it like almost made my top 10. I was thinking it was probably going to be in my top 10. Uh, but then I texted y'all and I was like, okay, here's a fun game. Uh, The Cure didn't make my top 10, but there's another 80s new wave band that released an album that definitely made my list. Uh, Maybe we'll talk about it on air. It would be like a fun game. And AJ, within 15 seconds, just said modern English. It's like,
So
oh,
the
yeah,
reason
okay.
I knew that is
All right, all right, you go.
I keep a list of like albums to check out, and I hadn't
Mhm.
checked that album out yet, but it was on there, so I knew of it. And so I was just like, yeah, it's there. And so what it did do is remind me I needed to check out that album, and it is fantastic.
It's so good, especially like Long in the Tooth, Not My Leader. Like it's like what I like about modern English is like they they remind me of The Cure. Like they've got a little bit of that like sort of like goth kid sadness, but they like zhuzh it up with like really upbeat pop
And they're more
production.
focused. They don't have 8-minute songs.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that
Yeah.
I love The Cure.
Mhm.
That's my biggest problem with the new album. It's in my top 24, but no, it's such a good album, and like
It,
each track sort of sounds different. Like it sounds like modern English, but slightly different. Even at one point, they sound like Gary
right.
Newman. I think it's on like is it
Yes.
Explosions, Exploding, something. That's a
Uh,
Gary Newman song right there.
for sure. And I do love there's one song on the album, track 5, Plastic,
Mm-hmm.
that there okay, what I love about it is it's not a good song. Like if a newer band released that song, like lyrically, uh it's such a like an old guy who's been doing music for the longest time, like trying to do this sort of like socio-political response song, but I give them so much leeway because of like who they are. And so I end up like loving the song. But I was like listening to it a bunch and I was like, if any newer band that, you know, is like even like 20 years old or younger, like in terms of their output, had released this
Mhm.
song, I'd be like, this song sucks. But since modern English has been around for so long, I'm like, you go guys. I love this.
Pass. Nice.
Yeah. So that's my number 10.
That's one that I'm definitely going to have to check out
I think you'll like it.
Oh
that
yeah,
text
yeah.
conversation. I was like, oh, I need to listen to that.
If I had gotten around to
Yeah, it's
listening to
good.
it 6 months earlier, again, it'd probably been at least in my top 24 because like I just the list is long. I get to that what I was saying earlier. Like there's too many albums being released in
Yeah.
some ways. And so I missed it until Kylan gave me a good reminder.
In a similar vein, I guess, Pet Shop Boys' new album had slipped to my radar until I saw it on David Martin's list, and I'm like, okay, I'm
Dude,
going to have to
that's the
listen to
thing.
that one too.
Yeah, okay. Pet Shop Boys, Modern English, The Cure, and Jesus and Mary Chain
Wow.
all released albums this year.
And
So
Goth Kids
like
Everywhere
I
danced.
noticed I know. So that was my thing is like I noticed like this year was like the year for people that you didn't expect to release albums to release them, because also then you had the 90s versions. You had Dandy Warhols and Eve 6 dropped albums this year that are both good. Um and Sean Ono Lennon and Usher released albums this year.
Very nice.
It's wild. Wild year for music, y'all.
I love though that you know bands are like Modern English who I mean they were big obviously, but they weren't like huge
Hmm.
enough to where you would expect them to still regularly
No.
put out music or whatever. So like the fact that they're
Right.
still doing it is
Yeah,
pretty
like
cool.
they're like I mean, I guess like you could ostensibly classify modern English as like a one-hit wonder.
Yeah,
Like I think like at large, like everyone knows I met with you, but the vast majority of people don't really know much beyond that.
right.
So yeah, it is cool that they're still just doing it.
Yeah. All right. My number 9 is L'Oreella by My Epic. Um,
Nice.
a little more shoegazy, a little less post-hardcore than most of their previous things. I think it sounds great, and it's not one of my favorite albums from them. Number 9 for my epic is kind of low, but it's good, but it's one that's still growing on me. So like
Right.
it could move up over time. Just overall a great band. If you don't know them, check them out if you like Thrice and stuff like that. Um, my favorite songs on there: North Star, Heavy Heart, both great jams. AJ, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is Lord Jane Grace's "Hole in My Head." Um,
Oh yeah.
it's such a good album, right? That opener, the whole, the title track, "Hole in My Head," is really great. Um, I'm digging the like music she's making outside of Against Me. I mean, I love Against Me, but the music she's making outside of Against Me is great. The album is like perfect for me for as somebody that like can't always lock into a genre, right? She does punk rock, she does kind of more folk kind of, and then some folk punk, and even borderline country at sometimes too.
Yeah.
Punk rock and basement just missed being number 15 on my list. It's a great song about like
Mm.
back in the day, we used to go to punk concerts in basements. I genuinely used to, at a venue called the Underground
Right.
in Phoenix. And then there's Cuffing Season and Mercenary that I really like. There's more, but it's such a good, just like eclectic album. She released this album and then an EP as well this year. So like that's a heck of an output. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, just solid stuff from her. I tend to I really like this album. I did not like the EP as much.
Yeah.
Which it's a different sound. The EP is. But yeah, this is good stuff. It's short. It's like 10 tracks, but like 24 minutes. It just flies through the tracks. It's
Yeah.
great.
Hmm, nice. Kylan, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is All Hell by Los Campesinos. I talked about A Psychic Wound. A Feast of Tongues is another really good song on that album. And the first song, The Coin Op Guillotine, really it's just everything I love about Los Campesinos. They're, like I said, they're one of those bands I always forget that I love so much. Um, but every time they come out with something new, I devour it. They're one of those like they do a really good job of having multiple vocalists, and they kind of stay in their lane musically every album, but always like push it in a little bit different direction. Yeah, they're one of those bands that I just I'm always here for it. In fact, the only ever music review that I've written for a publication online, I very, very, very briefly wrote for Bearded Gentleman Music in their 2017 album Six Scenes. I did a review for, and then realized I don't like writing music reviews.
It's hard, man.
So
Yeah.
it is really hard.
It's
I like talking on a podcast because I can BS a lot easier.
right. Yeah.
Much more of a talker than a writer. But yeah, no, they're just an incredible band, and if you're not familiar with that band, I do really think it is a perfect album to jump in because you kind of get a sense of what they're all about.
Nice. My number 8 is Imaginal Disc by Magdalena Bay. Um, been following Magdalena Bay for quite a while, probably I don't know, 7 or 8 years, and then their previous out their I guess debut full length came out in 2021 and was kind of a hit with the Rate Your Music community, and the new one has been a hit as well. It's currently ranked as the 127th overall best rated album on Rate Your Music.
Oh wow! What? So I'm fully unfamiliar with this band. Like, what kind of
It's like
music is it?
it's like progressive synth pop, like with some
Mm.
psychedelic kind of vibes in there, and um, this album, a lot of it has like live drums, which is like kind of I think unusual for this style of music, but it's for me, it's one that it doesn't like I can't just play over and over because there's so much going on to pay attention to. It's like it
Mhm.
hits me in a way that Kendrick Lamar's like albums do. Like there's so
Yeah,
much like
with
going
play.
on. Yeah, but Magdalena Bay in a genre that I appreciate more. I when I listen to it, I enjoy it, and
Sweet.
I'm also very tired at the end of it. But it's a it's 15 tracks, 53 minutes long, so it's yeah. Um, all right, AJ, what's your number eight?
My number eight is Candy Carpenter's Demonology. Again, like quirky
So
indie pop that sounds like it's out of the 80s. I mentioned Nervous System earlier. I like novels about vampires, Strawberry Starburst, which is about Amy Jo Johnson from Power Rangers. And then
nice.
Exorcism is another good one. But yeah, it's just really quirky, weird, interesting, sort of like referencing even growing up evangelical as well. Which I don't have that same experience that you guys do, but some people listening to this might and find kind of some of the ways that that's incorporated. Again, just even the title of the album is clearly a poke at that. Um, but yeah, it's just this really weird, fun, quirky album that you kind of like. Strawberry Starburst is the first song I heard, and I'm busting up laughing because it's a pop song about being in love with Amy Jo Johnson as a kid, and I can relate. I don't know about you guys, but can relate to that as like Amy Jo Johnson's
100%.
probably like one of my first crushes.
Fun,
For
So,
sure.
kind of a fun story. My cousin swears that I had a crush on her, and I do not think I did. I think he's mistaking me for somebody else. But that has come up
That's
several
funny.
tiry over the years.
but for those
Anyways,
that did, Strawberry
All
Starburst by
right.
Candy
Yeah.
Carpenter off of Demonology.
Nice.
very cool.
Love it.
All right, Kylan, what is your number eight?
My number eight is The Border by Willie Nelson. I talked about this briefly on my top songs list. Yeah, so I mean, Willie Nelson is a guy. So he came out with two albums this year. He's one of those guys. Like he's literally doing at least one, if not two albums every year. Um, but The Border really to me feels like a sort of swan song. Like it feels like a
Johnny Cash hurt.
uh yeah, it feels like a real final statement. And even with all of his other stuff, like this was the first time where I could really, really, really hear his age. Um, and a lot of the lyrical content that he's using on the record, it's a really, really, really beautiful record. The production is fantastic. I do feel because his last album that he came out with last year was like a bluegrass album, so it's really like upbeat and joyful. This album feels really kind of slow, um, contemplative, like just sort of looking back. He's got a song on there too called Hank's Guitar, where he didn't write the song, but it's about uh, the first song is like I had a dream. I was Hank Williams' guitar, and they like wrote like made songs together, and it just feels like a really beautiful sort of through line of like his whole career. Um, and it feels like uh, a really good sort of way to go out. I have no idea if that's actually the case, but I mean, he's like in his 90s now. I mean, he's still touring, but it I don't know, it really made me face mortality a lot listening to this album. Like, shoot, uh, we may lose Willie Nelson soon, and
Mm.
it makes me pretty sad. But it's a beautiful record, and he sings beautifully on it because he's done so like Dolly Parton is still coming out with stuff, and she even had like a feature on the new Post Malone album and stuff. But he is auto tuning the hell out of her voice, which is fine. Like, you know, her like she's Dolly Parton. Whatever she wants to do that. That's fine. Willie Nelson, you could tell this is like in a room. He's like, uh, he's getting through each song, even if it's just barely. But I love it. This is a beautiful record. I think everyone should listen to.
Very nice. All right. My number 7 is Lust for Gold by Starflyer 59. Bit of a return to Jason Martin's shoegaze roots, although the vocals I think are clearer than his more shoegazy albums, Silver and Gold. But the guitars are definitely back on the shoegaze
Yeah.
sound. And the songs are really good. I mentioned Lust for Gold, one of my favorite songs of the year. Also YZ80, 909, 1995.
Yeah.
Lots of really solid tracks. So yeah, that's my number 7. AJ, what's your number 7?
It's
Go
a
ahead.
well. Hold on. Let's talk
Go
about this
ahead.
for a second.
Okay.
It it's a really good record. We talked about it on Dial In for Martin with Josh and Jerry Morrison. I was incredibly impressed with this record. I think it took all of the elements of Starflyer that I really like and kind of distilled them down. And we had a theory on that show that because his son plays drums on most of the record, and so much of the lyrical content is kind of looking back at this like older version of Starflyer while using some of the techniques and vocal stylings of the newer Starflyer.
Mm-hmm.
And our theory was a lot of that was like his son coming in and being like, "Hey, let's make this kind of music like you used to." And it feels like a really like rejuvenated Jason Martin. And I think that record does feel like really kind of immediate in a way
Yeah.
that I like a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Also, me being the Rate Your Music addict that I am, I've been fascinated to watch it on there. It has 803 ratings on there. Vanity, his previous album in 2021, has 192. So the interest in Starflyer 59 went up quite a bit with this album. And I know
Yeah.
our friend Rain had a front page interview or front page review of that album on Rate Your Music's site that may have also
Oh,
driven some
nice.
traffic
Oh,
there.
cool.
Yeah. All right, AJ, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is Doc Mills' Dakota. I mentioned Medicine Rock as one of my favorite
Oh,
tracks.
yeah. Talk about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I sent this to you guys when it came out. But yeah, just solid, Americana roots, folk music, banjos, fiddles, all that good fun stuff, acoustic guitars, with kind of gravelly vocals. Good tunes. I mentioned Medicine Rock already. North Country Man, I really like a lot. I've actually heard like demos of North Country Man like a decade ago. So it was nice to hear a
Oh,
finalized
wow.
version. Like I
Nice.
text Doc Mills and I was like, I'm not crazy that I've heard this before. He's like, oh yeah. But I also like Burying Tree and Hazel Eyes. But it's just a very like reflective, kind of heavy content album, sometimes written in abstraction just because that's Doc Mills for you. But it's good tunes.
Yeah.
And it's wild because it was made like it sounds like it was made in like Kentucky or Nashville, somewhere in that
Yeah.
area. And he's from North Dakota and now lives in Jersey and works in New York City. And so and he got musicians in New York City doing the kind of bluegrassy Americana roots
Nice.
stuff that you're like, this does not sound like this was made in a studio in New York City.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
but
you
yeah,
sent
good
that
stuff.
one. Yeah, you sent that one too to me when it came out, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
And
yeah. It was like
it's
October, November, something like that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it was a really good listen. I
hmm
enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's kind of got that gravelly, kind of
Hmm.
heavy sort of weary might be a good way to put it. Vocals that I like.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Kylan, what is your number 7?
All right, my number 7 is I'm Doing It Again, Baby by Girl in Red. I talked about this a little bit on one of my favorite songs. Yeah, I mean, for fans of Phoebe Bridgers, Lucy Dacus, uh, Julian Baker, all the Boy Genius crew. She works in like a similar vein. I think she's a little more pop focused than those girls, but uh, really has a similar style of like very, very, very personal lyrics. She has a song on there, "You Need Me Now," featuring Sabrina Carpenter,
which is like my favorite
which
track
I
on this
think it
album.
came out. Yeah, no, it's so good. It's so good. And I think it was right before Sabrina Carpenter kind of like blew
Blew
up,
up, yeah.
right? They were both kind of in that same kind of indie space.
Hmm.
Yeah, just really good, sad lesbian pop music. So,
See, I tend to
uh,
try to focus on
highly recommended.
positives on here, but as somebody that really likes Previous Girl in Red, some of my favorite like music of the past few years has
Mhm.
been from her. This didn't land as much for me.
Yeah,
I think maybe the style changed a little bit. Like you
yeah.
said, more
Well,
poppy.
yeah, it took a while to grow on me because I was expecting some of the earlier stuff, but I like the pop direction for her. I think even if Girl in Red as a project doesn't necessarily get as much acclaim as it should, I think it is a good. You're kind of talking about like Anthony Ranieri using his album. It's like a proof of concept.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a good proof of concept for her as like a pop songwriter.
That's fair.
All right.
Yeah,
I need to check that one
good
out.
tunes.
Um,
You should. I think you'll like it, Eric.
okay. I'll add that to my list of things that I missed this year. My number six for the year is "How to Disappear" by Casey. Shout out to John Amos. This was I think his number one album of the year, and he actually introduced me uh, to this band.
Oh,
Really,
cool.
I was sad to discover that they had played at Furnace Fest the previous year before I found out about them, and I didn't watch them. Um, but their older stuff is more of a melodic hardcore kind of thing, but pretty critically acclaimed from Write Your Music. It looks like both are in the top 200 for the years they came out. This one is more melodic, and I guess overall not as appreciated because it is number 1,182 for 2024. But
Oh, wow.
number one for John Amos, number six for me. So do with that what you will.
Yeah.
Just really kind of atmospheric, alt rock, post hardcore, emo, uh, kind of stuff. So yeah. AJ, what's your number six?
Number six is Baysides There Are Worse Things Than Being Alive. Again, Bayside continues to evolve their sound, adding other elements and being, I think, really more aggressive, which I dig. But Castaways, The Devils, Miracle. This is one of the bands that they released a bunch of different EPs and kind of pulled some of them off of there, like Go to Hell. Gosh, and a few other tracks came from EPs that were on this. But yeah, it's just a good Bayside record, and Bayside is one of those bands that like they show up every year that they release an album. They show up in my top 10, but it's like never a one, two, or three. I always feel bad. I'm like, you're there in the top 10. I mean, I've got Bayside autograph
Yeah.
over my shoulder here. I've got probably, I don't know, a handful of Bayside shirts, but for whatever reason, they like always the bridesmaid, never the bride, for me. But yeah, just a solid, again, kind of aggressive album from them that I really liked.
Really good live band too.
Yeah, yeah, they're fantastic live. They're so
Yeah.
they've been together for with this lineup. Their lineup changed a lot initially, for quite a while, and they are just locked in. And they play also. They're one of the bands that like give you your money's worth. They play for an hour and a half, 2 hours, when they're the headliner.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you're like, geez, you're doing that for like $30? That's wild.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, Kylan, what's your number six?
My number six is the Early November's self-titled album. The Early November is one band that I've been into for the longest time. I never anticipated that the band that wrote I Want to Hear You Sad could write a song like What We Earned or We Hang On. This is definitely the heaviest. Um, because I was talking to you guys about it, and I was talking about it with Josh Olson. And I texted him that song. I was like, "Heads up, this is not indicative of what this band sounds like ever." Like I've never heard Ace Ender's voice do what he does on this record.
For sure.
Um, but it's really good. It's really good. I love him as a songwriter already. From the early November, Ace Enders and a million other people. Um, I can make a mess like nobody's business. He's like one of those guys that I've just like always been here for. And this new record kind of surprised me. I was like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing now. It's super riffy. Um, I don't like, I can't tell. It might be a concept album. It might not be. I'm not sure. It opens with the song The Empress, then The Magician. We have The Fool, The High Priestess. Like it feels like there may be a concept in there that we're not like or I'm not fully picking up on, but I think it's there. It's one of those albums I'm definitely gonna keep going back to in the next year, which I think is in, that's sort of my big litmus test for these upper echelon songs
Yeah, I always thought
or
of them as
albums rather.
yeah, like I always thought of them as being on the I don't know what the right word is, more dainty end of the emo
Oh
spectrum.
yeah, no,
So
they've been always like real whiny
for
acoustic
sure.
emo. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, like you when you sent me that, I was quite surprised.
yeah, it was a
Um,
big surprise. Yeah,
you know, uh, number five for me is "Blind Faith" by Gemma Hayes, who I mentioned one of her songs
nice.
earlier. Longtime singer-songwriter from Ireland. She's worked with Kevin Shields from My Bloody Valentine and things before, so that's kind of, I guess, her claim to fame with a lot of people. But she just has a beautiful voice, really good like folk pop songwriting. The new album is on the it just feels really vulnerable and honest, and I think all the things you want like a singer songwriter album to be. But she also has songs like Hardwired, which are probably one of her more aggressive songs, I guess I would say. But yeah, if you like, female vocalist, folk pop kind of stuff, check this album out. Check out her previous album, Bones and Longing, which helped me through many of nights of what's that called when you can't sleep? Um,
Insomnia.
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 Yes, this was the
Yeah,
soundtrack. That album was the soundtrack to my insomnia. Thankfully, not having that same problem as this one came out, but a very enjoyable listen. Um,
nice. Love that.
AJ, what's your number five?
Number five for me is Frank Turner's Undefeated album. I mentioned
Mm.
Ceasefire on that earlier. There's also a song called Letters, which is this great song about like his pen pal from when he was a kid and like what those letters meant to him and kind of thinking about that as he gets older. Somewhere in between, I mentioned already there's a song called Pandemic PTSD that I really like because maybe I've written about this on Twitter and talked about elsewhere. Like we as like a society have not dealt with the PTSD brought on by the pandemic. So it was I don't know, cathartic, positive, something. It was nice to see somebody actually like writing about that like, yeah, hey, this is a thing that seems to be like
Right.
lingering in our society, along with obviously over in England and elsewhere, that seems to be really encouraging a lot of I would use the word antisocial behavior and mental health issues that we're seeing systemic and society wide. So I dig that. But it's Frank Turner, so it's kind of like all over the place. At times it's super acoustic, at times like, talking about somewhere in between and stuff like that, a little bit postal servicey, at times it really punk rock. He talks about one of his songs that he's like turning
Mhm.
40 and he's returned to be like an angry man, which is something I sort of like can relate to a little bit. I joke recently of like 17-year-old me, like 37-year-old me looking back at 17-year-old me being like, you know what? you didn't know, but you were right about a lot of things. So it's kind of this album coming from him that is very similar to that realization. So yeah, it's a great album.
Nice. Kylan, what's your number
Sweet.
five?
My number five is Hell's Wells by Jesse Wells. I talked about that song Cancer. Dude, I love this kid. I guarantee you he's one of those. He's shown up in everyone's algorithms.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, like
But
he wears like jean jackets and plays outside.
yeah, exactly. But man, he writes very topical protest songs in a way I haven't like makes me feel like the kids are gonna be okay, right? Like he
Hmm.
uh his voice reminds me of Bob Dylan, his lyrics remind me of John Prine.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Um his album is so good. I mean, he wrote a song so on his album it's like all pretty topical stuff. He's got a song called The Olympics talking about like when the Olympics happened this year and everyone was like mad about all the stuff. He's like, why are you so mad about it? He's got a song called Whistle Boeing about the whistleblower from Boeing who
Oh yeah.
supposedly died mysteriously.
Hmm.
He's got a song called Trump Trailers, which is really funny about like what if Trump wasn't born rich and his dad owned a trailer park instead of real estate in New York. That's very funny. He's a really, really, really clever songwriter. Uh, that I've just like all the songs are really simple, just him and an acoustic guitar, and it feels like it harkens back to like all the things I love about like 60s and 70s folk music. And he's
What have you gone through?
doing it for
There we
real.
go. That
So
Hmm.
yes, exactly, yes.
Interesting.
He's got a song too called Payola, which I really love. Uh, because he says like I've made everything but a living. My voice has gotten used. I ain't selling my soul for a couple of views. Payola for thee, payola for playlists, blue check marks and follows and streams. We'll license your song. We'll give you 60%. We'll advance you some dough. You say you got money to spend. It's just like he's just like writing about his actual life and just like existing in this world. And I think he does a really good job.
Huh. Interesting. I'll have to check that one out too.
Yeah, it's good. It's fun. It's fun. It's like some of it's a little like, ooh boy, okay. Yeah, because he's got a song, but it's good. It's good. And all the songs are like really short. They're all like 2 minutes long.
Okay.
So,
Interesting. Um, my number four is "The Rain Falls Sideways" by Benjamin Daniel. Um, when to give an idea of how great of a year for music this was, when he first sent me this album, I said, "This is my second favorite album of this decade so far, behind Shelter Heart, his previous album." Yet it's number four on my list, so uh,
ooh,
it's a pretty strong year.
yeah.
Westward. I mentioned my favorite song of the year, "The Rain Falls Sideways," "Lights Out," "Returning the Favor," "The End That Never Came." All some great songs. Me and AJ talked about how his favorites were, I guess, like my least favorites on the album. um, but it's solid all the way through, even the stuff that I don't love as much as the ones I mentioned. It's still just really great album. He's one of the best songwriters out there. I harp about him all the time on
Mhm.
Twitter, so like you all know how I feel about him. And if you haven't checked out his stuff yet, you
If
should
you're
make that happen.
listening to or watching this show and are unaware of who Benjamin Daniel is, then this is not the show for you. Like,
I'm hoping that our audience will transcend the our Twitter crowd at some point. So maybe down the line, somebody singing this will not be familiar.
yeah,
But yeah,
go check him out.
if you
Go check
follow
him out.
me on Twitter, if you're in that same circle, you already know who Benjamin Daniel is. Um,
Hmm.
all right, AJ, what's your number four?
My number four is Snow Patrol. The Forest is the Path.
Nice.
Northern Ireland's Sad Boys came out pretty strong with this album. It's full of a bunch of different things that just you can tell he's getting older and having life happen. And so there's some really great songs out of there. I mentioned These Lies, The Beginning, Everything's Here and Nothing's Lost. Like he has songs about fatherhood that I really like. He has this lyric about you know, wanting to keep everything safe and so like touching everything with like museum gloves, like things that he loves with museum gloves. So it's just like this
Mm.
wonderful metaphor. But yeah, like this is the best album that they've released in a really long time, at least for me. I always want to qualify that
Yeah.
it is with for me. But yeah, it's good. It's got their like emotive, you know, lyrics and vocals and even kind of like the music tricks that they use that probably pretty familiar to some folks that do like worship music because I do think they borrow some of it. They just do it in a I don't know more focused way. But yeah, it's a really great record that surprised me honestly when I saw that they released a new record. I was like, yeah, I'll put it on, whatever. And I was listening to it and I was like, oh, this is good. And
Yeah.
it became, frequently played. But I do think that this is probably my favorite album of theirs since Eyes Open in 2006.
Mm,
So, in nearly 20
Right.
years.
wow. Wild.
Yeah, that's
Um,
cool.
yeah, another one I am going to add to my list. All right, Kylan, what's your number four?
Okay, my number four is Anniversary by Adeem the Artist. Um, so this could be you know a little bit contentious with people, but I love Adeem the Artist. If you're unaware, they are a queer, non-binary country music performer. Um, and they write songs that are also like really personal. And I talked about Nightmare in my favorite songs section. What I love about them is they also well I don't want to put words in their mouth. I think they identify as a uh, Christian who's making music as
Mhm.
well. They write a lot about growing up evangelical in the South, uh, but from a position where like they could easily be like really bitter or like part of the whole like ex-evangelical crowd, like like screw this, the church hurt me, blah blah blah, this stuff, I'm angry and bitter. uh all of their songs that sort of reference that definitely come from like a place of love, and they're like really I don't know, it helped me get past a lot of sort of hurt and trauma that I've had from church experiences. Like to hear someone that has lived through it, that isn't just like kind of stuck in the uh, I'm angry at
Mhm.
church and God kind of thing. Like
Yep.
it does. It's a really, really, really beautiful personal album. That's a lot of fun. It's a lot of like upbeat kind of country stuff. Some really good ballads in there as well. So if you haven't listened to it, I at least recommend like a listen through to see where they're coming from. Uh, yeah, definitely one of my favorite albums of the year.
Another one that sounds pretty interesting. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
has good ratings on Rate Your Music too, for
Nice.
anyone who
Cool.
cares. Um, all right, so down to the top three. Um, so I don't on my current rating system, I don't give out a lot of 4.5s and fives. I have only 70 albums that I've given more a 4.5 or more to. All these top three, uh, I've given at least a 4.5. And so my number three is "Songs of a Lost World" by The Cure. Their first new album in 15 years. Dark and spacey vibes, big drums, all the things that I like from The Cure. saw, I think, five of these songs live when I
Yeah.
saw them last year. They translated great in that setting. And actually, they released a CD live recording of this album, which I just recently picked up. I think has a lot of replay value. The songs are long and kind of dense, and there's a lot to pick out in them. I think. So yeah. Also, it's number 690 overall on Rate Your Music, number 5 for 2024. So doing pretty well on there for those who care. Um, yeah, love it. So what's your number 3, AJ?
Real quick on the Cure album, I need to
Yeah, go
listen to
ahead.
the live album because I really did like those songs
Yeah,
when we heard them live. But I don't know if they translated as well for me in the studio, and so it's in my top 24 for the year. It's somewhere in the teens. But I'd be curious if I heard the live version if those would hit more for me.
yeah, I do.
Um,
I agree with you. I do think it was the vibe came across a little different in live setting for some reason.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Uh, Good timing from Kylan because number three is Middle Kids Faith Crisis Part One. This is an
Hey,
album that
controversial take. Good album.
well, this is an album that like you had mentioned to me like several times of like something I
Mhm.
needed to check out, and finally I was like, fine, I'll check it out. And then I listened to it. I was like,
I
oh,
know. I bugged everybody about this album this year.
what's
Like
what
y'all aren't the only ones.
What's hilarious about this is like I've also heard about them from a few other people, and there's like three bands that I can say like several people told me to check out that I like loved. And Middle
Hmm.
Kids, Gaslight Anthem, like when I finally checked them out like 12 years ago or whatever, 13 years ago
Woohoo.
now. And Spanish Love Songs. Those three bands, like several people were like, "Dude, you need to check this out." I was like, "Yeah, I'll get around to it." And then I checked out. I was like, "Oh, why haven't I been listening to this like for much longer? I should have listened to it the first time." Somebody, but it's catchy. It's kind of indie. Like there's, I think, some Block Party influence from them, which I really dig.
Hmm.
They do kind of have somewhat have a vibe of like Phoebe Bridgers too, like doing some of the Boy Genius stuff. It may have been you, Kylan, that was like you that album is what you hoped the Boy Genius album would have been.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, no, this is so good. Like I mentioned Go to Sleep on Me, Dramamine we talked about, Terrible News, like but it goes on. Like the list goes on. Like there's short of like the interlude, which they could have pulled.
Right.
I don't know if there's necessarily a track that I don't like on this
Yeah.
album. So it's good to know that the Aussies can still produce some good music.
It was on my honorable mentions, but I didn't mention it because I knew at least one of you would be talking about it.
Oh, it's gonna be all I'm gonna talk about at a certain point of
Yeah,
this show.
very good album that you should check out. Um, all right, Kylan, what is your number 3?
Okay, my number three. Surprising me this year, Chaos Angel by Maya Hawke. If you had told me that the girl from Stranger Things, Ethan Hawke's daughter, uh, would come out with one of my favorite albums of the year, I would be like, yeah, okay. Uh, but man, that whole album. Okay, so she's a really good songwriter. I love her voice. The production on the album reminds me of both like early Feist meets like early Bon Iver, or like self-titled era Bon Iver. There's like lots of fun sounds. It feels really lush, but also like really close and personal. Um, yeah, her songwriting style, like she once again she writes like really really personal lyrics to like specifically in the song Missing Out that I mentioned. Um, she hold on, what's the lyric I really like? Um, it's basically kind of about her like being a nepo baby. uh, she says, "Now I'm a drunk hanger on, hitting on the younger guy. I buy booze for the Ivy League for my television salary. They think they look up to me. I was left like coals and leaves. It sparked up in Winter's Breeze, but now I know it's me who's missing out.
Hmm.
And it's kind of just about her realizing she's missed out on a lot of like sort of like typical experiences based on where she is, and she doesn't like shy away from it. You know what I mean? Like she kind of like hits it head on. There's one song on the album I really like too that is so Justin Vernon. It's called Better. It's all just acoustic, or not acoustic. It's all just vocal, but with like tons of auto tune. But it sounds like,
Hmm.
but it's just like very like Justin Vernon.
Mm-hmm.
And then it starts to like build on it with a little bit of like Imogen Heap, maybe.
Ooh,
Hmm.
yes.
That's who I
Um,
thought of. Yeah.
yeah. But it's really fun because my daughter, her favorite movie this year is Inside Out 2. And we started listening to this album. And Maya Hawke voices anxiety in Inside
Hmm.
Out 2. And I told my daughter, I was like, do you know who this is? She's like, I was like, this is the voice of anxiety. And she's like, oh, anxiety makes music? I was like, yes, baby. That sentence makes so much more sense than you even know. But she likes it a lot too. So
uh,
yeah, no, it's a good album. I highly recommend it.
my 7-year-old went as anxiety for Halloween this year, so she loves
Oh,
anxiety as
nice. That's
well.
so
Yeah.
fun.
That's funny. I go as anxiety every single day of the year.
Yeah. I bet. Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. All right. My number two is Doll by Artemis, Dall, which
Of course.
is an acronym for Divine All Love and Live. I have no clue what that means, but um, it's
To
my
be
favorite
fair,
K-pop.
I think there's a pretty good chance Artemis doesn't know what that means either.
There's probably a possibility of that. But this is my favorite K-pop album. I'm only a few years into my journey, but this is my favorite K-pop album so far. I gave it a
Yeah.
4.5. Uh,
Nice.
Butterfly Effect, my second favorite song of the year. Candy Crush, another great one that was a candidate for my list. Virtual Angel, the first single, was also in my top
Mm-hmm.
five. It's got the kind of cutesy, optimistic kind of vibe that I like from K-pop, but it also incorporates the synth pop and R&B and electronic vibes that I really enjoy in pop music. So yeah, just one that I played like crazy this year. Um, so what's your number two, AJ?
My number two is my most listened to album for the year, and also my second most listened to artist, and that is Benjamin Daniel, The Rain Falls Sideways.
Nice.
Yeah, so I know you talked about it already, Eric.
Mhm.
But yeah, some of the songs I like that you didn't mention were Kill Me and Fear Him, and I can't remember if you mentioned The End That Never Came. I like those a lot on top of obviously Lights Out and Westward and pretty much every song on there. But yeah, this is a very like calming album for me. I actually got, told that to Benjamin when we talked to him. As somebody with a lot of anxiety, this helps like regulate that sometimes. It's good music to like write to as well, and so it's always kind of on in the background. But yeah, it's by far, but I think the next album that is like half as much time listened to it. My most listened to album this year.
Very cool. It might be my
Nice.
most listened to
Love
too.
that.
I've played it quite a bit.
He got robbed by CCM Twitter Awards. He got robbed.
Yeah, oh yeah. It should have been much higher than 15. I don't get that
Yeah.
at all, but okay. Um, all right, Kylan, what's your number two?
Okay, guys, don't be mad at me. Don't uh I'm not the producer of this episode. I'm just a guest since AJ is recording. So I know I'm in a precarious position. My number two album, straight up, F1 Trillion by Post Malone. Uh, I love that album. I do think we've talked about a lot of like modern pop albums are so bloated,
Oh yeah.
like too much. Um, I think the fact that he got Tim McGraw, Hank Jr., Dolly Parton, Billy Strings, like the features he was able to get, Brad Paisley. Uh, I I think he made a like legit country record that I really love. It's definitely like a throwback to '90s country in the best way. I did come up with an alternate track list that cuts it from 18 songs, I think, to 13. Um, but man, this is one that's been on repeat in my household since the day it came out. And even because he came out with the double album, the Long Dead version or
Yeah.
whatever. The second album, he doesn't have any features, but there's a ton of really good songs on that too. Um, I know the Morgan Wallen song is like the biggest song on the record, and it's really good. But there are some other just absolutely killer country songs uh, on that record. And I can't stop listening to it. I'm sorry, everybody, but it's so good. It's so good.
I enjoyed it, but I thought it was too long for me. But like I like
I'll send you my
your track list.
I'll send you my alternate track list. Yeah, I'll send it to you
Okay.
and see what you think listening through it.
Okay.
It makes more
Yeah, sounds
sense.
good. All right. Um, okay. So I know everybody's going to be so surprised at my number one. It is the Chilling
No,
Alpine
what is it?
Adventure.
What is it?
The Chilling
What?
Alpine Adventure.
Yeah.
The Following Up presents the Chilling Alpine
This
Adventure.
is shocking.
Yeah,
Dang.
I'm sorry, y'all.
Jesse can rest easy tonight.
I am I can't help it that this band and previously and apparently going into the Chilling Alpine Adventure just make the music that I resonate with the most. By far, for the most part, like it's kind of like I hate that kind of that they are so far ahead of like whoever my second favorite artist would be. But I mean, it's nothing but
Hey, you like
bangers.
what you like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. Don't apologize for it. It's the same that I'd say to Kylan for Post Malone. Like
yeah,
what you like. Don't apologize.
right.
Yeah.
Uh, but I mean, it's just great, atmospheric, alternative rock songs, intriguing lyrics.
The only thing that was surprising, well, and not even surprising to me, but because this album came out so late in the year, I think it's a testament to like how good of a band they are and how much you love them that they still ended up at number one.
Yeah,
I mean,
I had
because it
said
came out the
December
27th.
27th. Yeah, but I had it a few
Yeah,
days before that. But like I had said that if it wasn't easily going to be my number one, that I would like push it off to the next year, trying because it would have been hard to try to figure
yeah,
out if it wasn't like the easy number
right.
one where to put it. But it was the easy number one, even in a year
Easy number one.
with two other 4.5 star albums for me, which is
Yeah.
this is the first time we've had three 4.5 or more in my list since 2015,
Ooh,
which I mentioned.
nice.
So
Yeah.
just an awesome year. Um, I I was anticipating a lot of great albums this year, so like I was expecting it to be great.
Mhm.
I don't feel the same about 2025, so hopefully some things are gonna come out and prove me
When
wrong, and 2025 will also be a great year. But yeah, pretty stoked on my top
nice.
10. Um, AJ,
Yeah.
what's your number one?
My number one is Sad, Anxious Lesbians, Pale Waves, Smitten. It's
Nice.
just good. Like it's Cure inspired, but like Cure at their poppy side, which is the version I like more than their spacey side, right? But all the songs are got good hooks. They're clever. They've got good emotions to them. She's got a great voice, and they're just like a tight sounding band. Again, I bet that they're amazing live, and I've not had the chance to see them live yet. But really like Gravity, Not a Love Song, Hate to Hurt You, like they're all really good kind of just like alternative pop rock songs. But yeah,
Yeah.
there was a real battle though. I mean, I texted you guys about this. So like my top
Mhm.
four,
So
there
just
was different orders on all of them. Like this at some point. So we're talking like tomorrow I might feel slightly different with this order of my top four. But I will say this, like the Pale Waves record came out in like October and it's in my like top 10 for the year that I've listened to. Right.
Mhm.
nice.
So that tells you how much I've listened to it in the like 10 weeks or so that it came out.
Right.
Hard
Love it.
to it really is hard to like not pick it. It was really hard to not pick Benjamin Daniel. I was like, come on, it's my most listened to. But it's like, yeah, that came out like months before Pale Waves.
Right.
And
Right.
so ultimately it came down to that. But yeah, there was a version of my top four that this came in second. But I today that's what I'm going with. And now it's recorded, it's locked in. Hey Kylan, gee, what's
There
yours
you
gonna be,
go.
buddy?
Let me make a comment on that real quick.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm reading the comment box on Rate Your Music. Somebody comments lots of Cure guitars with the thumbs up emoji. So
heck yeah.
nice.
definitely something I'm gonna have to check out. All right, Kylan, I think I know your number one too, but tell us what
Oh,
it is.
you think
Yeah.
everyone might know it? The only album I think I've talked about to death with everyone in my life since it came out. Yeah, Faith Crisis Part 1 by Middle Kids. Here's the deal. I was not a huge Middle Kids fan until this album. Like I liked them, but it was similar to like the Boy Genius kind of stuff. It was like all kind of like mid-tempo.
Mhm.
It was like good indie rock, but for some reason this album just like hit me like a train this year. And the reason it kept coming back as my number one, I was talking to AJ about this, like every time I listen to it, and I've listened to the entire album all the way through, more than any other album, like by a long shot, is I had a different favorite song. And that's how I know an album has staying power for me.
Yeah.
It started out like Dramamine was like my hook, right? And I
Hmm.
like obsessively listened to that. And then it was Highlands for a long time, then Bootleg Firecracker,
Hmm.
then Terrible News, Go to Sleep on Me, then Your Side Forever, all in my head. Like everything. This album is just like the perfect album for me for 2024. It's got uh yeah, I think I described it once too as like uh fentanyl laced bubblegum pop. Because it's got like a real like it's got that real sort of like happy poppy thing, but then when you like dig into it, it's like, oh no, okay, yeah, this is like real intense. Yeah, I think it's so if I was to ever write music reviews again, that would be my opening line for my review of this album.
Nice.
Yeah, just everyone go listen to it so I can stop bugging you about it. Is all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, it's definitely worth your time if you haven't listened to it yet. Speaking of Boy Genius, who topped the Uproxx Critics poll last year? Kylan, did you submit your ballot for the Uproxx Critic poll yet?
I forgot.
It's not. You haven't put. The deadline's not over yet.
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's true. He posted yes. Okay,
Yeah.
so if I don't do it tonight, then I'm not gonna do it. So I'm gonna start it right now.
So
Okay.
the list that I gave here is exactly as my what I submitted there is. So if you're an artist on this list, if nothing else, your name will appear on Uproxx's website whenever they post that. Um, all right. Want to shout out to WoW tier patron Tim Rogers and Seltzer tier patron Michael Porter. Um, do y'all want to do one good thing? Did you have something in mind or
Um, it's a new year, baby.
yeah?
That's my
I
one good thing.
I still love frozen pineapple, so yeah, that's my one good thing.
There you go.
AJ, you got anything?
My one good thing is Faith Crisis Part 1 by Metal Kids, if y'all haven't listened to it, as I
Yeah,
slowly
same.
get closer to the
Yeah,
How about our
Yeah,
one good thing is our number one
yeah,
albums of the year.
that'll work.
Unless, sorry, AJ, if you have
Did you have something, AJ?
Not, I mean, my oldest started basketball this season, so
Oh,
she
nice. Yeah,
enjoys it. She enjoys doing it. So,
my
and
youngest is playing.
we finally got all the Christmas presents like opened up and played with. Like with four kids and a huge family, we've just been like chiseling away at them, being like, "Yeah, today you get to open this one." And we're finally through it, and we got Christmas decorations away. So like that's the one good thing, but maybe that's not a good thing. I don't know. But yeah, my oldest started basketball. She enjoys it.
Nice. Very nice. And it's fun for at least for me as a dad to watch, so I bet you're probably gonna enjoy enjoy that too. Um, if you're watching the video on YouTube, comment